Do-do-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends. I'm sorry for the flood of videos this week, but I've had lots of questions about the newly announced Faction Wars Tournament Arena. Today, I'll briefly go over what to expect, show you some gameplay of the new features, and give you some quick recommendations about which factions I expect to do well. It's a fun mode, and I've enjoyed the handful of matches I've played. Pitting factions against one another feels true to the 40k universe, even if the factions aren't totally balanced against one another. Faction Tournament Arena does what it says on the tin. You pick a faction, join a queue, and wait to get matched up against another player and their faction. I know what you're thinking straight away. Not all of the factions currently in the game are full of 5 characters. Dark Angels, Adeptus Mechanicus, World Eaters, Blood Angels, and Tyranids spring to mind. Snowprint solved this problem by adding a lore-fitting 5th character to these factions, or, in the case of the Tyranids and Blood Angels, simply making them unusable. This game mode has 2 new features. Orbital Bombardment is Snowprint's way of preventing stalled battles, where players refuse to engage each other in combat. As you'll see here, from round 8 onwards, the outer rows of the map will be marked as bombardment hexes, and remaining in those hexes will cause your characters to suffer damage. The other feature is Armour of Contempt. This gives all player characters going second a 100,000 health shield as long as the character isn't in deep strike. This is supposed to mitigate turn 1 kills that might otherwise be possible through crazy abilities and synergy. On screen here you can see me scroll through the usable factions and note the characters added to flesh them out. The Dark Angels get Incisus, for the Admech they get Morven Vale, and for the World Eaters they get Angrax. I'll have all of this on an infographic later on, so don't worry. The Ultramarines lose Certus from their original squad and have to use Titus. What happens if you don't own a character but still want to play the rest of the faction? Well, the good news is that every character is automatically unlocked. However, if you don't own a character, then it is capped at common rarity, which obviously limits how competitive you can be with that particular team. Regardless of a win or loss, players fielding a faction which they fully own get plus 2 points per battle. If they only own 3 characters of the faction, then they get plus 1 point per battle instead. I'm joined in battle here by FMG, Tacticus Ambassador and Friend. You can see here that as he goes second, all of his units have this chunky shield to protect them from the mighty firepower of the Tau Empire. As this footage is simply for illustrative purposes, we skip through several turns and you can now see the Orbital Bombardment effect. This marks the hexes in a glowing colour before dealing bombardment damage to them. As the turns progress, the Orbital Bombardment area grows. You can see that on the subsequent turn, we now have 2 colours for the bombardment, each presumably doing different amounts of damage. Unfortunately, at this point the test build crashed, and I wasn't able to get you any more footage of the bombardment. However, that's probably for the best given the inevitable outcome for the crude orcs facing against the might of the Tau Empire. I promised a short video, so I won't ramble on for too much longer. On screen, I've noted the teams that are available with slight differences, as well as their 5th character substitutes. Not all factions are made equal, and some desperately need some reworks. I've made a sort of fun attempt at ranking the factions playable in which ones I think will do best and which ones I think will do worst. I think that the Tau, Thousand Suns, and Death Guard are early picks for top choices. The new Terminator buff is really good, and the Death Guard Death Ball becomes a whole new level of menacing. I couldn't decide if I should put the orcs in the greater good or good tier. I think that they are really powerful with their new reworks, but might struggle a little bit against the highly armoured Terminators. The rest of the factions are fairly middling, but I have left the Black Legion and Necrons in the bottom tier. I hope that after Snowprint is done buffing the orcs, they can turn their attention to one of those 2 factions next. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully that cleared a few things up. A big thank you to my Patreons as usual who have given me a platform to continue making content on a regular basis. If you are a newer player who hasn't yet used their referral code, I'd love if you could consider entering mine. It earns you 100 Blackstone and supports me in the work that I do. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!